Imagine feeling constantly drained, overwhelmed, maybe even resentful. Like you're always saying yes when every fiber of your being just screams no. If that sounds familiar, well, you're definitely not alone. But what if reclaiming your peace, your energy, wasn't about doing more, but maybe about drawing a few simple lines in the sand? Today, we're taking a deep dive into well-being in your boundaries. Protect your peace and energy from demands. We've gathered some really fantastic insights, everything from guides on setting personal limits, strategies for managing our, hyper-connected digital lives, and even some pretty clever ways to say no with grace. So our mission, it's really to arm you with the knowledge, the practical tools, to start setting boundaries that actually protect your health and your happiness.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is how often we kind of misunderstand boundaries. We think they're about shutting people out, right, building walls. But really, as the material we looked at shows, they are much more about creating healthy spaces, places where your own energy can thrive. It lets you take charge of your life, feel less overwhelmed, which of course brings up a really important question. If they're so good for us, why can they be so incredibly difficult to set?
Okay, let's unpack that. Our sources describe boundaries as these, like invisible lines. They define where we end and where others begin. They're about setting healthy limits in our lives, really, to take care of our own health and well-being.
Exactly. And to make that maybe a bit more concrete, we can break them down. You've got physical boundaries. That's about your space, your body, like maybe preferring a handshake over a hug from someone you just met, or, reserving close physical touch for people you're really close to. Then there are emotional or mental boundaries. These are limits on, say, discussion topics, maybe deciding you won't discuss body image if it makes you uncomfortable, or choosing to share really personal stuff only with, trusted people like your parents or maybe a therapist. And finally, time boundaries. This is huge. It's about limits on how much time you dedicate to things, like having a set bedtime or carving out time specifically for self-care or being firmly unavailable for work stuff after 5 p.m. It's really about managing your personal energy.
That makes a lot of sense. But okay, if defining them is one thing, why is it so hard to actually establish them in practice? What's the big hurdle the sources point to?
Yeah, it almost always comes back to this pattern of people-pleasing. And look, this isn't just about being nice. It's often a really deep-seated thing, maybe a coping mechanism learned way back. And the signs, well, they're pretty clear once you start looking. Do you feel like super guilty saying no? Do you find yourself putting others' needs first, even when it really hurts you? Maybe avoiding those tough conversations just because you don't want to upset anyone? Or, saying yes when you desperately want to say no, and then feeling that resentment bubble up later. If you're kind of nodding along, you might be caught in that cycle. And often this difficulty, it stems from fear, right? Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, maybe low self-esteem, or just this really strong desire to be liked.
It's powerful when you frame it that way. One expert we read actually shared this story about saying yes to pretty much everything, just juggling all these responsibilities, constantly giving, and described coming home just feeling emotionally and physically wrecked, not from lack of sleep, but because their energy had just been, as they put it, siphoned away. So the end. So for you listening, the takeaway here is it's not just about being polite. It's actually about protecting your core self, your energy. And building on that idea of siphoned energy becomes super clear that boundaries really are the ultimate self-care. You hear that empty cup analogy all the time. You can't pour from an empty cup. But what the sources really get into is not just filling your cup, but understanding how permeable it is. Like how certain demands can create these tiny leaks that drain you constantly, even when you think you're okay. Without those boundaries, life just feels exhausting, doesn't it? Always pulled in 100 different directions.
Exactly. And there was this one piece that really highlighted how energy is contagious. We absorb what's around us, the good and the bad. So without clear boundaries, we just soak up way too much of the draining stuff, leaving very little for ourselves. Setting them helps you feel lighter. Yeah. More focused, more at peace. And it's not selfish. It's absolutely necessary for your well-being. It gives you space to recharge.
And the impact goes beyond just energy levels, right? Constantly putting your own needs last because of people-pleasing. That can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, even depression over time. It leads to that feeling of burnout, and it can really chip away at your self-esteem.
For sure. Our minds just get cluttered with everyone else's expectations and needs. So drawing those firm mental boundaries helps you reclaim your own peace of mind, like knowing when to disconnect from social media or email. It's not just a nice idea anymore. It's pretty essential to prevent that digital burnout, the anxiety that comes with it. It clears the mental clutter.
That's a really good point about clearing the clutter. But, there's this common worry, isn't there, that setting boundaries will push people away, lead to isolation. Did the sources offer any perspective on that?
Oh, absolutely. They were very clear on this. Boundaries are not about building walls to keep people out. They actually tend to deepen the right relationships.
Yeah.
When you communicate your needs and your limits clearly, but also compassionately, you end up building healthier connections, ones based on respect. The right people, the ones who genuinely care about you, they'll respect your boundaries. It might take them a little time to adjust, sure.
Right.
And the wrong ones, well, the ones who kind of relied on you not having boundaries, they tend to fall away. And honestly, that's part of the magic. It acts like a filter for your life.
Right, a healthy filter. So when you say nay to things that just don't align with you, your values, your energy, you're not just stopping the negative stuff from coming in. You're actually creating space, real valuable space for your own passions, your own growth. You free up time and energy for what actually matters to you. Okay, so let's talk practicalities. How do we actually do this? A lot of people feel like, oh, I'm just not good at setting boundaries. What did the sources say about that feeling?
They basically say that's a myth. It's not some fixed trait you either have or you don't. Setting boundaries is a skill, like cooking or learning an instrument. And just like any skill, it takes practice. It takes rehearsal. You might even mess up sometimes, and that's okay. You adjust. The goal isn't immediate perfection, it's progress. Progress, not perfection. And the big mistake people often make is waiting until they feel confident before they actually act, thinking, okay, I'll set that boundary when I feel stronger. But it doesn't work that way. Confidence actually comes from the doing. The more you practice setting boundaries, the better you get at it, and the more confident you naturally become. It's like a cycle. So how do you master this skill? The sources break it down into 3 key steps. First, feeling it. You got to tune into your gut. Notice when something feels off, creates that internal friction. Especially if you're used to people pleasing, this means consciously learning to trust that feeling, even if your mind tries to talk you out of it. Your intuition is key. Second, communicating it. Once you feel it, you need to be clear, direct, but also compassionate. Using I statements helps. I feel X when Y happens, rather than blaming. No vague hints, just straightforward. Like, I care about you, but I actually don't feel comfortable discussing my body image right now. Or, I can't make it at that time because that's my dedicated self-care time. Simple, direct. And third, this is often the hardest part, following through with it. If you state a boundary but then don't stick to it, you're basically telling people, you don't need to take me seriously. Following through means holding firm. Maybe it's walking away from a conversation that crosses the line. Maybe it's just consistently reinforcing your no. That's what gives the boundary its power.
That follow-through piece is so crucial, isn't it? It's where the rubber meets the road. Okay, so on the communication part, especially saying no, the sources had some really clever, graceful ways to do it. What's one technique that stood out for just being simple but effective?
Well, one I really liked was just the awkward pause. When someone makes a request, especially if it catches you off guard, just pause. Count to 3, maybe even 5 in your head. Let there be a little silence. It stops you from that automatic yes reflex, gives you a second to actually check in with yourself.
Oh, I like that. Buys you thinking time. And what about when a straight no feels a bit too harsh? The sources mention the soft no, or no but, like, I'm totally swamped with this project right now, but I'd love to connect once it's done. It acknowledges them, sets the limit, offers an alternative, seems less confrontational. Or the classic, let me check my calendar and get back to you. That's a lifesaver, right? Avoids that immediate pressure. And for our digital world, things like email bounce backs, setting an auto reply saying you're in monk mode for deep work, that sets expectations.
Yeah, and for work situations, especially with a boss, that phrase, yes, what should I deprioritize? That forces a real conversation about priorities, doesn't it? Happy to take this on. Which of my other projects should slide? Sometimes, apparently, even just a bit of humor works. A confident, maybe slightly cheeky nope can land well. And I like this one. You are welcome to X. I'm willing to Y. Like, you're welcome to borrow my car. I'm willing to leave the keys out for you. Subtly says, I'm not driving you. Clever. And lastly, maybe suggesting someone else.
I can't do it, but maybe Sarah might be interested. Deflects politely.
Those are all great tools to have in your toolkit. But the key thing to remember is that setting boundaries is an ongoing practice. It takes time. It takes self-awareness. You will get pushback sometimes. That's almost guaranteed. Try to remember it's often more about their discomfort with the change than about you being unreasonable. Just gently restate your boundary. Don't get drawn into long arguments about it. And if you slip up, because we all do, just be kind to yourself. Reestablish the boundary again, compassionately. It really is about consistently respecting your own needs and communicating them effectively.
Absolutely. And shifting gears slightly, in today's world, we have to talk about digital boundaries.
Yeah.
They feel less like an option and more like a necessity. That constant connection, excessive online time, it really does lead to burnout, anxiety, you name it.
The data on this is pretty stark, actually. Studies are showing things like adolescents spending over 3 hours a day on social media have double the risk for depression and anxiety symptoms. And then there's the blue light from screens messing with sleep. Nearly half of teens report it affects their sleep negatively. Plus, for everyone, those constant pings and notifications just shatter our focus, making us less productive.
So how do you even know if it's becoming a problem for you? What are the red flags? Things like feeling really irritable or anxious if you can't check your phone. Maybe neglecting actual responsibilities because you're scrolling instead. Physical stuff too, like eye strain, headaches, or even finding you prefer chatting online to actually seeing people face to face. Those are definitely signs.
Right. But the good news is there are concrete strategies for finding some digital peace. You can start simple. Set specific time limits for those problem apps. Most phones have settings for that now. Create tech-free zones. The bedroom is a big one. Maybe the dinner table, too. Places dedicated to rest or connection. Scheduling regular digital detoxes, even just an afternoon or one day a week, totally unplugged, can reset things. And definitely turn off non-essential notifications. That constant buzzing is designed to distract you. Practicing mindfulness can also help. Just being more aware reduces that impulse to constantly check in online.
And thinking even broader, boundaries aren't just about saying no reactively, right? It's also about proactively shaping your life. The sources talked about problem-focused coping, which means actually changing your environment or removing the stressors, not just trying to feel better about them.
Exactly. So instead of just managing the stress of an overwhelming to-do list, you actively reassess it. You cut things out, you delegate, you reduce the actual workload. Or it might mean actively seeking out more social support, joining a group, calling a friend. And it definitely involves consciously cutting out things that add stress. Maybe that's limiting your news intake or reducing caffeine or stepping back from draining social obligations. It's about taking control of the inputs. You know, one lesson that really resonated from an expert's personal journey in the sources was about self-love and knowing your worth. They talked about how setting boundaries without feeling guilty or constantly comparing yourself to others, it really stemmed from this deep internal shift, realizing your own inherent value, understanding that your peace is non-negotiable. It's not arrogance. It's just this fundamental self-respect that makes it almost impossible to let others constantly drain your energy. So if we bring it all together, setting boundaries, it's not just one thing. It's not just saying no. It's this whole process, right? It involves self-reflection to figure out what you need, then clear, kind communication to express those needs, consistent follow-through to make sure those limits stick, and learning to adapt these skills across your whole life, personal, professional, digital. It's really an ongoing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive, boundaries are just fundamental to your well-being. They're not optional extras. They protect your energy. They boost your mental health. They help you build more real, authentic relationships. And it is a skill, something you can learn, something you can refine, even if it feels really awkward at first. Remember, progress, not perfection.
And maybe the most empowering thought to leave with is this. Setting a boundary isn't just about self-preservation. It's actually an act of deep self-love. It creates the space needed for the very best version of you to show up. Your peace is priceless, and you are absolutely worth protecting.
So maybe for you listening, what's just one small boundary you can start with today? Could it be that tech-free zone in the bedroom? Or just practicing that pause that, let me check my calendar before you automatically say yes. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and definitely keep protecting your peace.